Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. The Lakers won their second consecutive game, back-to-back blowouts for LA on a back-to-back, beating the Sacramento Kings 128-104 to improve to 36-24 at the 60-game mark. They are now a half game back of Denver for number 5. And they play Denver twice in the next 2 weeks. So a couple opportunities there to make up some ground in the standings. They also will have an opportunity to play Minnesota next week and make up some ground. Or technically, like a week, 9 days from now, they'll be playing Minnesota. But over the next couple of weeks, they have some big matchups with Denver, Minnesota, and New York. But nice win for LA, all things considered. The Kings are, by record, the worst team in the NBA. By net rating, the second worst team in the NBA. They're also without several starters in Sabonis, Levine, Keegan Murray, then also DeAndre Hunter off the bench. So this is a depleted version of arguably the worst team in the NBA. However, the Lakers took care of business for the second consecutive game. LeBron was a game time decision. He was questionable going into this one with his left foot arthritis, and he ended up playing and having a really nice game. So the Lakers beat the Warriors. They beat the Kings. They do what they're supposed to do. They improve the point differential. They improve the net rating. They improve the plus minus with the big three, the net rating with the big three. And they also get some much needed rest for those guys. It was not the most extraneous back-to-back here where guys were able to sit. Austin and Luka were actually about to check in with about 8.5 minutes left, 8 minutes left. And JJ decided to just send them back to the bench and give both of those guys the entire fourth quarter off. So back-to-back games, Luka was able to take off the entire fourth quarter, which is not something he has been able to do much, if at all. It's been a rare occurrence this season. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate you all for tuning in. As you guys see behind me, we got the TV up. Shout out to my dad for the assist there. And now I'm going to be able to go from watching games in the office to directly going live. It's something I'm really excited about. It was the final piece to the office, and then I just got to finish up the bookshelf. And then shout out to my mom, who, as some of you might have seen before the stream started, once this video gets to 100 likes, she'll be gifting 10 memberships. So make sure you guys hit that like button, and let's get it up to 100 likes. With all that said, let's get into the game breakdown. So Buha's big picture is, I'm keeping it short and sweet and simple here, just taking care of business. And what I mean by that is the Lakers, this is crazy. And not only did I double check this, I triple check this, but this was the Lakers' first time with consecutive double-digit wins since November 28th and November 30th, the 6th and 7th wins of that 7-game win streak they had to close out November. First time with back-to-back double-digit wins since November 28th and November 30th. That was over 3 months ago. So we have gone over 3 months with the Lakers not winning. They've won consecutive games, but they have not won consecutive games by double figures. And, technically, like on the road trip, right, they'd have a game where they won by double figures, and they'd lose a game, then they'd win another game by double figures. So if you're just counting like the wins, there have been other pockets of the season where the wins have been by double digits, but actual consecutive wins of no losses in between back-to-back wins, they have not had that since the end of November. So that to me speaks to a level of seriousness over the last couple of games. We do have to factor in the caliber of opponent. And again, the Kings are the worst or second worst team in the league. The Warriors without Steph, Porzingis, and Jimmy are a lottery level team. So They have played a couple of easy games, but they have done something that they have not always done against easy opponents. Like, they have taken care of business against easy opponents, but they have not always blown them out. They have not always given Luka the fourth quarter off, Austin the fourth quarter off. So to see them put teams away, really, like both nights, it was, both games were basically over by the end of the first quarter. Tonight there was a little bit. Kings had some momentum going into halftime. Then early in the third quarter, they were able to cut the lead down to 10 a couple times. But outside of that, LA then responded with a couple of incredible runs to push the lead back into the 20s, almost around 30. So just some nice basketball from LA over the past couple of games. I don't want to take away too much, just because, as we've said with this group, we've seen what we've needed to see from this group against 500 and below teams. They have been one of the best teams in the NBA against that caliber of opponent. I believe in the West, they're right behind only OKC in terms of, looking at it right now. Versus below 500 teams, they're 23-7, which is the third best mark in the West behind OKC and San Antonio. So even comparing them to Houston and Minnesota and Denver, who they're right there jockeying with, now they're only a game and a half back of third. They have a better record against sub 500 teams than those teams. The difference is they're 4 games under 500 against 500 and above teams, whereas Houston is 6 games above 500. Minnesota and Denver are both 1 game under 500. So those teams have fared better against better competition, and that's the next level for LA. But one of the only consistencies with the Lakers this season has been their inconsistency. So to see them put it together for a couple of games, even if it isn't the best opponent, this is not changing where I have them in the West. This is not telling me anything about how they're potentially going to fare in the playoffs. But, I think we got to give credit where credit is due. And the Lakers having back-to-back 20-plus point wins and just taking care of business to the point where guys were able to actually rest in the fourth quarter, which has not been something they've been able to do. I do want to acknowledge at least that step in the right direction. And even then going back to the Grammy trip, remember the blowout wins against Washington and against Brooklyn. Those were the types of games the Lakers were winning by 6, by 8, by 10. A lot of their crunch time wins, not all of them, but a decent amount, have been that context of playing a bad team, goes into a crunch time situation, they pull out the game. So to not have this type of situation these last couple of games, it's a low bar to clear, but the Lakers have not always cleared it. And I do want to acknowledge some progress in that regard. In terms of notable performers, we have to start with Luka Doncic, 28 points, 5 rebounds, 9 assists. I think back-to-back games here from Luka where I loved the shot pass decision-making. 9 assists to 1 turnover, incredible assist to turnover ratio, 10 for 16 shooting, 4 for 8 on threes. Only real blemish is the 4 for 7 on free throws, but you live with that. Just a great game from Luka. Lakers were plus 18 in his 29 minutes, a team best plus minus. And there's moments he was just toying with the Kings out there and playing with a joy and just a level of freedom that I think is when Luka is at his best. He had the and one kind of breakdancing move where he lost his balance, was on the floor, got back up, cashed in the 3. So just a fun Luka game. Had a great block. Came over in the zone and had a nice block. So really, really solid Luka performance. LeBron, 24 points, 1 rebound, 5 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 3 for 4 on threes, and had hit a couple in a row, then heat checked it, missed that one. But the shot has been back recently to a degree, especially the last couple games. And this is something we talked about last night on the stream. If LeBron can get the shot back, and remember the last couple of years, he's been a 40+% catch and shoot guy. If that can creep back up into the high 30s, on a similar amount of volume as he's had, or maybe even a higher volume, then that's a real weapon and a real wrinkle within the Lakers offense that they have not had right now, because LeBron has been a low 30s three-point shooter for most of the season. But he also, Lakers, 4 of their 5 starters had a steal overall. They had 8 players with a steal, 14 steals for the team. Going to get to Marcus Smart, who led the way there, but 2 steals and a block for LeBron. So making plays defensively, getting out in transition, and bullying the smaller Kings front court. Then Austin Reeves, 12 points, 3 for 9 shooting, 2 for 6 on threes, 4 for 4 at the free throw line, 5 assists. One thing I talked about with Austin lately is like the assists have not been there as much as they were before his injury, but he's clearly taken a step back offensively in terms of becoming more of a third option here, and more of a distant third option at times. And I think there's a level of sacrifice with Austin and his game right now that isn't necessarily being discussed. But like, some of this has been, yes, some of these games he has struggled, and against some of the more physical, athletic, speedy, dynamic defensive backcourts, but some of this has also been Austin, I think, assimilating into what the Lakers were doing before he came back, and him willingly taking a step back of, like, someone had to take the step back between LeBron and Austin. Up to this point, it has been Austin more than LeBron. I think it should be more matchup based moving forward in terms of like how each player can attack that defense, and just who has a mismatch, who has an advantage, who's in a good rhythm, who's in a good flow. Austin has not really been able to find that rhythm consistently. He's had pockets of games, but he hasn't quite put it together yet outside of that Philly game, which was before the All-Star break. But I think he still needs some patience with him. But I did like some of the things we saw in terms of the 5 assists, which was an uptick from he's often been in like that 2-3 assist range. Had a couple blocks as well, made some nice defensive plays. Then Marcus Smart, 9 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 5 steals. 5 steals, had nearly half of the Lakers' steals. He was all over the place defensively, diving on the ground for loose balls, setting the tone. And I think Marcus was huge tonight in terms of just giving the group a jolt of energy, a much needed jolt of energy. Like, this is a group that can, as we know, this is a group that can run a little low energy, a little low motor. They can be a little too chill at times. Marcus is the guy who he shakes up the snow globe. He comes in and, well, he starts games and then he re-enters and just provides some much needed energy for the team, and continues to shoot the ball well, hit 3 threes tonight. And that is something to monitor. Like, I jokingly said it last night, and the Lakers did it again in terms of the shooting. They shot 18 for 39 on threes, 46%, back-to-back games, 46% on threes, 19 last night, 18 tonight. So that's 37 threes over the last couple of games. They got to save some of these bullets for some of the bigger matchups, for the Nuggets, for the Knicks, for the Wolves. But it is encouraging to see them shooting better, and the overall offensive flow and pace. It was something I talked about last night in terms of the offensive uptick. I think that's been something that continued into tonight as well. DeAndre Ayton, I thought, had a really solid first quarter. Then like a decent second quarter, then had a rough third quarter. He ended up getting pulled earlier than his typical rotation substitution pattern. 12 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Right now, this is probably the worst defensive center rotation / front court in the league. So you do want to see DA eat in this type of matchup. Went 6 for 6. Missed his only free throw, but did have a couple steals, a block, was making some plays in the zone. I think got outworked by the Reynaud, the rookie on the Kings, and JJ talked about it after the game, that right now they're like, especially Reynaud and Eubanks, they both have been doing a really nice job rebounding the ball. So they were able to get some offensive rebounds against not only DA, but Reynaud had 6 offensive rebounds. Achua had 5 offensive rebounds. They were that was like the one way Kings were kind of staying in the game. So I think that some of the box outs and effort on that end could have been better, but nice performance, especially based on his recent play of 6 points over the last 2 games. Then off the bench, Luke Kennard, just continue to love the way that he plays. And tonight, so against the Warriors, it was more of the offensive output and a combination of the 3-point shooting. We saw the 4 for 7, both highs from Luke in terms of makes and attempts, but also some of the inside the arc finishing ability. Tonight, it was more of that, 3 of 5 threes for Luke, but also the passing. Like I really like the way that Luke attacks, and he is, one thing that the best offenses do, especially for role players, is like you want to make a decision that they call it 0.5, and you want to make a shot, shoot, pass, or dribble. You want to make one of those 3 decisions in half of a second. Like that is the goal for every role player. Luke Kennard fits into that perfectly. And we talked about it last night, him getting defenses into the blender and attacking on the weak side. People panic close out to him. He's able to drive. He's quick. He can get to the rim. He can make plays. He had a nice, several nice dump off and, kick out passes tonight. So 5 assists for him, which I believe is his Laker high. Had a steal and a block, was fitting in nicely with the zone. Jackson, 4 points, 5 rebounds, had his minutes cut a little bit where the Lakers went with a 3-headed center rotation. We will be touching on the rotation with one of the takeaways. But he struggled with foul trouble, had 4 fouls in his 13 minutes. But, decent game for Jackson, I would say. Just sort of a typical Jackson game. Jake LaRavia, 4 points, 2 for 10 shooting, 0 for 3 on threes. He continued to play in the garbage time. He's kind of gotten that role of being like the Gabe Vincent role, sort of playing into garbage time, even though he was technically second in the bench in minutes, tied with Rui. And I guess overall he was tied for 6th in minutes on the team, but did not shoot the ball well tonight, though. I thought rebounded well, 7 rebounds, 3 offensive rebounds, had an assist and a steal. So Jake continues to, he contributes in a variety of ways, but the shot is obviously something that fluctuates game to game dramatically with him. Rui returned from his illness, 8 points, 2 of 8 shooting, didn't have an efficient night. Actually, inside the arc, went 0 for 4 inside the arc. So the finishing with Rui, as some of those were, a couple of those were mid-range jumpers, but like the finishing with Rui is quietly been an area of his that he's really dropped off on this season. And like he's not getting this, the cuts and some of the same looks he's been getting, but he's also not been finishing in the paint as well as he has over the last couple of years. But he played 22 minutes, again, 8 points, 2 rebounds, a steal and a block. I mean, everyone was doing the only, I'm looking at it, every single Laker who played rotation minutes tonight had at least 1 steal or block. And then even going into the garbage time guys, Dalton came in, got a steal. Adu didn't get a steal or block. The garbage time guys didn't, other than Dalton getting a steal. But the primary rotation guys, Lakers went with a 10-man rotation. Everybody had at least 1 steal or a block, and several guys had both. Then Maxi Kleber, Lakers played him for the 2nd consecutive game. He ended up playing 14 minutes, 6.6 rebounds, a couple of awesome dunks, had a poster, and then also had a nice finish, had an incredible block on Eubanks with his left hand, kept the ball in bounds and started a fast break opportunity for LA. So a couple offensive rebounds for him. Like Maxi's been really solid the last couple games, and we've seen stretch, like this is now probably the 3rd or 4th kind of stretch he's had of like 2 or 3 games in a row where he's been able to be a really effective rotation player. We'll see if he can sustain this or how much he can sustain this down the stretch of the season here and into the playoffs potentially. But I'm going to touch on Maxi in a second, but I just wanted to at least highlight his stat line. Then with the young guys, I mean, Bronny came in and hit a 3. Adu had an incredible drive for a powerful dunk. Almost had another offensive rebound putback dunk that putback that he was short on, but really nice and 1 dunk from Adu. And like I think it's probably too late that ship has sailed with him being a rotation guy, but I think he's showing some signs here of what he can be, and I'm optimistic about what can materialize with him potentially as soon as next season. But even like projecting out, because I still think he's more of a project, he's shown some flashes that I've been encouraged by. Then stat of the night. I mean, I'm tempted to go with the back-to-back double-digit wins for the first time in over 3 months. I consider that more of like a fact than a stat. So let's go with second straight night with the 46+% on threes and 18+ threes. So 18 threes is tied for the second most threes the Lakers have made in a game this season. Technically third because they've had a couple of 19 3-point games overall. Also look at the 34 assists. That's one of not a season high, but one of the Lakers. I believe it's in the top 3 or 4 off the top of my head. Also looking at 23 stocks. I think 23 stocks is either tied for a season high or a season high. So just a all around solid game from LA. And for those who are curious, when I mentioned the offensive and defensive rating stuff, Lakers had a 128 offensive rating tonight and a 104 defensive rating. So both elite marks. Now let's get into the 3 takeaways, and then we'll get into the Q&A. Takeaway number 1 is the new rotation again. So we did this one last night with the new rotation, but there was no Rui. So quickly on the rotation, Lakers went with 10 guys. Jared Vanderbilt was a DNP CD for the first time since December 10th. So now with Vando, we're going back almost 3 months to the last time he was a DNP CD. That was that Spurs game in the in-season tournament that the Lakers lost. Would have sent them to Vegas had they won. They would have played the Thunder. So we're going back a while here. That was the stretch where Vando had 8 straight DNP CDs. He played against Phoenix when the Lakers beat them. Then he didn't play against San Antonio. They lost that game. I think it's clear now, and this is the way it's been trending, and this is what I've been trying to alert people, because I know there's still a Vando hive that is adamant he should be the 5th starter, adamant he should be starting over Marcus, or at least like playing more. I'm not at the starting point, and I also just think basing this in reality, it's just not going to happen. Like, you're not going from being outside of the 10-man rotation to starting at this point in the season. Just barring injury, I don't see him even being a factor. Even then, I think it would be Jake. And then I think if Jake got injured, it would be Rui. And then if Rui got injured, then it might be Vando. But Vando, I don't see starting or having like this big role that a lot of people have wanted him to have. At the same time, I think he should not be a DNP CD guy. And I don't know exactly where the minute, like, I don't love the notion of a 3-headed center monster. And this is where, so tonight, Ayton plays 18, Jackson plays 13, Maxi plays 14, and the Lakers close small the final 4 minutes with no big man out there. Like, Maxi played well, and Jackson has been steady, and DA, his struggles are well documented, but I think he's just right now set into a certain role. If this is the way that the Lakers are going to play it, then I mean, the only way Vando would get minutes is if you're chopping off the Rui, Jake, Luke minutes. And right now, Luke is playing great basketball. I think Rui has been demoted from a starter to a bench role. And like, I think the Lakers want to keep him engaged with a certain role. And then Jake has largely been solid over the last couple months. So I don't know where these Vando minutes come from, but I think ideally, even if it ends up being like more of a 10 and a half man rotation, and maybe it's like Maxi or Vando is more matchup dependent. I think Vando, like, there's going to be matchups the Lakers need Vando, but clearly what we talked about this coming out of the All-Star break of like, what's the Lakers rotation going to be? And I was expressing some skepticism of Vando's spot and that he was probably the 10th man. It's clear now. The Lakers have a top 9, and I think Maxi's 10th and Vando's probably 11th, but that might flip-flop. But even if you're 10th, that means it was sort of unclear like who might lose their minutes in the playoffs. Like, I think if the playoffs were starting tomorrow, they would play 9 guys at least to start a series, and then probably whittle that down. And who knows, with JJ, it might be a 5 by game 4. But I think it'd be the starters plus Rui, Jake, Luke, and Jackson. I think those are the 9. And I think Vando's on the outside looking in. But in terms of the new rotation tonight, so we finally saw it with Rui, with everybody healthy. So again, they go with 10. Vando's on the outside of the rotation. Maxi's in it. But so they go with the starters. And then Rui is the first sub. Subs in for Marcus because I guess JJ's trying to give me a heart attack with the OG starters. They actually won their first shift. They were +5 in like a minute. Then they closed, or I forgot when they might have closed the first half, or they had another shift in the third quarter. I forget, but they were like -4 in. They closed the first half and they were a -4 in a minute. So I think they ended up being like a +1 in 2 minutes. Incredibly small sample size, but that lineup continues to infuriate me. But so Rui comes in for Marcus for a minute. Then the Lakers come with the Jackson and Luke combination, which they've liked those two playing off of each other. So then they keep in Luka and Austin. So this is something we talked about last night in terms of extending the Luka-Austin stretches and then also extending the LeBron stretches. So they go starters, briefly Rui in place of Marcus, then a longer stretch of Jackson, Rui, Luka, Austin, and Luke. So very offensive-minded lineup. They go with that for a few minutes. Then they bring in Jake for Austin. Then they go with that for a little bit. Then they bring in LeBron for Luka to close the quarter. Go with that to close the quarter. Then they start the second quarter with Maxi in place of Jackson and Marcus in place of Rui. So then it's LeBron or Maxi, LeBron, Jake, Luke, and Marcus. And then that base trio of Jackson, Jake, Luke, JJ really likes. Then they start to bring in the starters, and then so Austin will come back in for Luke, and then you get some Austin LeBron minutes together. Then Luka actually, I think Luka and Rui come back in for Jake and for now I'm blanking who else, but it ended up being like the big 3 plus Marcus. There was a shift with Rui in there with the big 3. Then there was another shift with Marcus in there with the big 3. And then they eventually bring back in DA. So that's kind of the gist of the rotation. It wasn't exactly the same in the second half. It was pretty close. But again, like Jackson came in. He was actually the first sub in the second half because DA was not playing well defensively. And they went on that little run. And, he was a culprit there within the zone. So that's the gist of the new rotation. I like a lot of the new lineups. I do like the Jake, Luke, Jackson trio. I like playing more Luka and Austin together, more LeBron by himself, but then also Austin being that bridge between the big 3, and the big 3 has been playing better. Now, it's a lot of this has been the last couple games against bad teams, so we'll see if they could sustain that into next week and into some of these big matchups coming up. But I've overall, I would say, liked the rotation. I don't agree with the Vando part of it, but I understand it to an extent, just because he remains the most offensively limited player on the team by far, or in the rotation by far. I should make that distinction. But and clearly, like for JJ, that's just a deal breaker right now, especially as they've really prioritized the offense here. The defense had some rough stretches, transition defense rebounding tonight. Those were like a couple blemishes. Sacramento had 16 offensive rebounds. They were able to get out and transition early offense a lot of points off turnovers tonight. But the offense has been, I think, the thing that's been most encouraging over the past couple games. Then takeaway number 2, I mentioned him already, but Maxi Kleber makes another case for a larger role. And again, I want to just keep the perspective here of Maxi will have these like little 2, 3, 4 game bursts of like looking like a rotation guy, and then he will kind of come back down to earth. Tonight had some incredible plays, again, with the 2 dunks, the block, just the energy that he was playing with. I've made this point several times throughout the season, but like he just does so many smart little things in terms of his screen angles. He's a sneaky, dirty player, but I mean that as a former sneaky dirty player myself, I mean that in like the best way. It's the utmost compliment from me. But like just the little things he does, where like sets a ton of illegal screens. Always is doing the Gortat screen. And the Lakers, whatever he plays, will get like 1 to 2 Gortat screens. But just like his screens are like DA is a good screener, and Jackson I think has improved as a screener. And with Jackson, it's a lot more like, can he, almost slip out or like leverage his athleticism more? Maxi sets the best screens. And there's a reason why JJ had him check in for the Phoenix game, because he sets like bone crushing screens. And we saw him get into it with Malik Monk, and like just him sort of shoulder checking him on that drive. Like he plays with a certain physicality and tenacity and like just no bullshit that I really like. Now, I think the Lakers are in an interesting spot right now because they clearly are not happy with the center rotation. I mean, JJ, the dude with the sign, like I'm just imagining JJ like holding a sign on the sideline saying like need center help. And he's been holding that sign for the last 2 seasons. But because basically the Lakers have been going with a 3-headed center rotation, but it's often been DA, Jackson, small ball. But then he's also mixed in some Maxi there. He's even mixed in some games where they've done all 4 guys, and they've had the 3 centers plus small ball. So JJ is desperately like grasping at like what is going to work at the 5 for the Lakers, and he has lost trust in DA, and Jackson seems to, at least with like the fully healthy group, have a little bit of a ceiling in that like 15-18 minute range. And then there's sort of like the additional minutes that he often gives to either Maxi or small ball. But what I will say with Maxi is like, I think when Maxi is at his best, like DA has the highest ceiling, right? Like the best version of DeAndre Ayton, if the Lakers can go in a time machine and go back and get the version of DeAndre Ayton they had the first 6 weeks of the season, and the version of DeAndre Ayton who played against San Antonio in that early November matchup and like held his own for stretches, including in the fourth quarter against Wemby. If they can get that version, that is clearly like the highest ceiling of any center on the team. But they have not had that version of him, I would argue, in months. Like even I think the best games DA has played recently have often been more offensive performances than defensive performances. Like I really think the defense has slipped off to a point where it's really hard to trust him or play him in big games and big matchups. The rebounding has been up and down, and that's to say nothing of the finishing has not been as efficient as it was. So like DA comes with a lot of questions and a lot of potential problems. Jackson, I think, is steady, but Jackson just is what Jackson is. He is a backup center. And while I have advocated and will continue to advocate for him starting, it says more about DA. The fact that I'm advocating for Jackson starting, to me, says more about DA than it does about Jackson. It's more so just like, I trust Jackson more. I know what Jackson's going to do. He can have the stretches where he fouls a little bit too much, is a little bit mistake prone, but like, we talked about like DeAndre Ayton doesn't want to be Clint Capella. Well, he doesn't want to be Jackson Hayes, and like Jackson Hayes wants to be Clint Capella. So Jackson Hayes can play that Clint Capella role, and he's not the rebounder or the defender that Clint Capella was in his prime, but like he's right up there as a lob threat and one of the best lob threat finishers in the league. So Jackson has that utility and that fit and connection with Luka, but I would argue like the version of Maxi that the Lakers get when he's at his best, like a game like tonight or the Philly game or like some of the games he's had, some of the Utah games he's had, most of them have been against, off the top of my head, most of them I feel like have been against like lesser competition, but he has had some decent games against like decent teams. That version of Maxi gives them a different wrinkle. And like, I actually think he's better defensively than Jackson and DA when he's like on and locked in and able to physically move. And again, with the screening, just like the little tricks he's doing, he can switch, but he can also protect the rim. He will box out. He will rebound. Offensively, he's not really a lob threat, although he's looked more spry recently. But I just really like what I've seen from him. I don't know how sustainable it is just from a physical perspective. He is not shown he can put it together for like a couple weeks in a row, multiple weeks in a row. But if he can, I do think it makes the setter situation is already pretty muddied. It makes it even muddier, but I think it's a good problem to have just because, again, how unreliable the center spot has been just from like a starting level. Like the Lakers have 3 backup centers and they're trying to split the minutes there. That's ultimately where they're at. And takeaway number 3 is continued standings watch. So some notable developments tonight. The Timberwolves beat the Nuggets, so that helped the Lakers. I mean, it was a win-win for the Lakers, but Timberwolves jumped the Nuggets in the standings. Lakers are now tied with Denver in the loss column. And again, as I mentioned at the top, they play Denver twice over the next couple of weeks. But that does help Minnesota. So like the Lakers are jockeying obviously with multiple teams. So it's a win-win, lose-lose. But I think Denver's looking a little bit more vulnerable. They've had a tough weekend losing to OKC and Minnesota in games that they clearly wanted to win. And you know, we're getting up for. They're shorthanded in terms of no Gordon, no Watson. I think that's their 3rd and 4th best players, but it just, you know, I think they're gettable, and it'll be a big test for LA on Thursday. Then San Antonio lost to New York. Their win streak was snapped, but they have a pretty big lead right now on the 2 seed. So they're now 3 games back of OKC. They will likely remain number 2. And if I had to predict it, I think OKC is going to be the 1 seed. San Antonio will be the 2 seed. And that's just of note for the Lakers of, you know, if you're in the 4 or 5, you're almost certain. I mean, you are playing OKC in round 2 if you win. If you're in the 2-7, 3-6, you want to stay out of the 2-7 just because you don't want to be the 7 seed. But if you're in the 3-6, you will play San Antonio in round 2. And I think between the options of San Antonio and OKC, I think San Antonio is a much better matchup for LA. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. Appreciate you guys. Ryan Lucas, thank you for the super chat. You familiar with Grant Nelson, ever on LA radar? I am not, but is that a prospect? I guess that is. I'm totally tapped out on the college basketball side. I guess he's on what the he's on the Nets. No, I've not been as tapped in with him. But Ryan notes underrated gem. I will check him out after this. I appreciate the heads up. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing that I hadn't heard of him, but now he's on my radar. Jay, thank you for the super chat. La positive regression from 3, 7 for 10. Last couple. Yeah. So LeBron's trending in the right direction. 7 for 10 over the past 2 games. Before that, because we're in March right now, obviously. Technically, the Golden State game was in February. Even adding in the Golden State game where he went 4 for 6, LeBron shot 26% on threes for the entire month of February. Granted, there was the All-Star break, and so he played, 6? He played only 11 games in February, but 26%, including that 4 for 6. So, like, before that, he was probably at, 24% through the month of February. So, he's not been shooting great. In January, he shot 34%. December, he shot 31%. November, that was only a few games, but he shot 33%. So he has not had an above average 3-point shooting month yet. So it's been a struggle for LeBron from deep. That's just been I would say that, and the turnovers and some of the defensive stuff, those have been the biggest differences compared to last season. But the last couple of games, he shot the ball well. He's gotten into a good rhythm. I think even the types, he hit a couple pull-ups tonight, just the flow he was in, the confidence he was letting it fly. It was nice to see. So yeah, a lot of positive regression there. Sarah Talks Ball, thank you for being a member for 5 months. Appreciate you. My GOAT, Maxi Kleber, getting some highlights. LFG. Yes. I love Maxi. He was one of my favorite role players before he got traded to the Lakers. He's obviously not been the same player the last couple of years. physically and like injury wise, but we're seeing the kernels. We are, can he sustain it? Can he remain in one piece physically for the next couple months? I don't know the answer there, but if he can, there are going to be some matchups where I think he's the Lakers' best center. Jay, thank you for the super chat again. These blowout wins are nice regardless of opponent, but we are about to find out what this team is made of. Denver, New York, Minnesota, Denver, Houston, and 6 of the next 9 games. Yeah, and you know, those teams are, with the exception of Denver, and we'll see the second Denver matchup because it's 2 weeks from now. Like this first one, they're not going to, I'm pretty sure they're not going to have Gordon or Watson. I think they could have one or potentially both for the second one. So like that'll be an even different level of right now. I mean, Cam Johnson, I thought had a decent game against OKC, but missed some big shots, had a really rough game today against Minnesota. Like I think they're kind of in a predicament with him where he is just not lived up to expectations, both due to injuries, but also due to performance. So we haven't really seen what they look like full strength, but I think they are potentially trending into a situation where it's going to be Gordon and Watson starting and Johnson coming off the bench. And so whether it's that or it's Johnson starting for political reasons, whatever, I think ultimately on the season, Gordon's been their third best player, Watts. So like those are a couple of big pieces Denver's missing, but it'll still be a nice test. Like Jokic is playing, so it's a fair fight, right? Lakers have their big three. They have Jokic and Murray. New York, I mean, the Lakers have a chance to get their lick back against them. They just had the big win today against San Antonio. Minnesota is in a much different place than when the Lakers played them earlier, at the very beginning of the season. They had they always have like a shaky start to the season, then they round into form progressively, and they're pretty up and down in general. You never know which version of Minnesota you're going to get, but like that'll be a nice test. Denver again, a couple weeks later, like a rematch, and again, potentially healthier on the Denver side. Then the Houston baseball style series in Houston, part of a 6-game road trip for LA. That's going to be a really nice test. And like, I also think it's going to be like, there's a pretty high probability, and not even pretty high probability, like it's almost certain at this point, the Lakers are going to play Minnesota, Denver, or Houston in round 1, right? Like, so, I mean, OKC is probably going to be the 1 seed. San Antonio is going to be the 2 seed. Unless the Lakers fall into the play-in, they're going to play one of Denver, Minnesota, and Houston. So they get 2 cracks at Denver, 2 cracks at Houston, 1 crack at Minnesota. It'll be nice to see how they stack up, and can they go, let's put New York to the side for a second, just because that's an East Coast team, and the only real way that they would play them would be the finals. For those 5 games, can they go even 2-3? For me would be a success based on how they've performed against the general top playoff picture and those top 10 teams, right? Like they have the worst record among the top 6 in the West against those top 6 teams. So even 2-3 for me would be some progress. You'd love to go 3-2. Of course, you'd love to go 4-1, 5-0. I don't think that's going to happen. But if they can go 2-3 or even 3-2, I think that would show me something. Because as I said, coming out of the All-Star break, the final couple pieces for LA are like getting healthy, figuring out the lineups in rotation. That they've gotten healthier. They're starting to figure out the lineups in the rotation. They've had a couple blowout wins. The point differential is back in the positive. The net rating's back in the positive. The big 3 plus minus and net rating is back in the positive. Those are all great things. And that was like sort of the bare minimum I wanted to see coming out of the break and them trend in that right direction. But the big thing and the final thing, in addition to that and staying healthy, was I want some statement wins. And they have not had statement wins lately, right? Like it's been a minute, and especially with the big 3, because like they've been able to beat some, even go back to the Minnesota game, right? Like both Minnesota and San Antonio. Minnesota was without LeBron. San Antonio was without Austin and LeBron. So it's like, in a way, as we know with the lineup data, the Lakers have almost been better at times this season with only 2 of the big 3, or sometimes even 1 of the big 3. But when you have all 3 of them together, there's more of a ceiling there. So I want to see, like, can they beat some good teams with the big 3 all together? Because ultimately come playoff time, those guys are all going to be, as I've said before, in the 38 to 42 minute range. They're going to be sharing the floor probably for at least 20-ish minutes. And you need to be able to win those minutes against good teams. So can the Lakers do that remains, aside from health, which is still the biggest question with this team because they've not been healthy for more than like a couple games in a row all season. Aside from the health cloud hanging over them, the biggest thing is just can they hang with the big teams with the big three? And we will get an answer here over the next 9 games. So I'm really excited for this stretch. We're going to learn, right? They go 0-5, season's over. This team is maybe getting swept in round 1. They go even 1-4 would obviously be a disappointment. They go 2-3, 3-2, 4-1. Some optimism there. Now there's like the next level of this of can they beat San Antonio and OKC because they're 1-3 against San Antonio, 0-2 against OKC. Now there's some context there of like guys missing certain games and Lakers basically punted 2 of those games to San Antonio. But, the one full, they played both OKC and San Antonio once full at basically full strength. And they got their, so I guess there was no LeBron and no J-Dub for that first one in OKC. They got their asses kicked. And then the one healthy San Antonio matchup for both teams, they got their asses kicked again. So we'll see if they, how they fare against those teams. They don't play San Antonio again, so it would have to be in the playoffs, but nice test coming up. Mosier, thank you for the super chat. Why is Austin back to being a role player now? He's been sitting in the corner a lot. It's a fair question. It is a good question. I don't have an answer for you. I think they have, one thing I talked about recently is like sort of the usage, like sort of changes recently. And so like Luka has pretty much hovered around the same usage. I think the last couple of games, his usage has been lower, but LeBron's usage has maintained, if not been a little bit higher. Luke Kennard's usage has gone up. Marcus Smart's usage has gone up. And the Lakers have actually been using Austin more as an off-ball threat and as more of a shooter. And technically, he's been the best shooter of the big 3 this season. He's shooting the highest percentage on... I don't know if he's shooting the highest... Like, Luka might have caught him on threes. Let me see going into tonight. He's definitely shooting the highest on catch-and-shoot threes. I don't know if he's shooting the highest on threes overall. He's still shooting... Going into tonight, he was shooting 37.5% on threes. Luka was at 35.8. So I would assume Austin's still ahead of him there, and Austin is ahead of him on catch and shoot. So I think going into the Big 3 experiment this season, there was a strong argument to be made that LeBron was the best off-ball player because, as we saw in Miami and to a lesser degree Cleveland, and to a lesser degree in LA, like LeBron off the ball with the cutting, transition, and post ups and just attacking from different spots on the floor. There's like a versatility and like a malleability to LeBron's offensive game that isn't quite there to the same extent as in Austin or a Luka. Luka, it's going to be a lot of pick and roll and ISO. He can go in the post, and the Lakers have done that more. He can come off-ball screens. The Lakers have done that more recently too. And then Austin, Austin's basically diet Luka, right? Like he is a lesser version of Luka in terms of he's a high pick and roll player. Although several offensive metrics he's held his own this season, but heavy pick and roll, heavy ISO, does typically need a screen to kind of create an advantage, get going. But they're different in that like Luka's bigger, Luka's got more strength, and Luka's got the decel and like the craft with the footwork. Austin also has his craft with his footwork, but he's more so speed, wiggle, shake. Slightly different players in that regard, but like the general usage, the general type of attack is like more so on-ball guys. But with LeBron's shooting this season and him not being the same caliber of shooter, up to this point, although he's had a nice couple of games. I think the Lakers have made a recent concession that Austin is actually the guy who like maybe has to play off the ball more and be like, I've talked about him being more of a scorer, LeBron being more of a passer. But another part of this is like Austin has just been the best shooter of the three. So by nature, like it's kind of like when you think about sort of that like third banana role. If you go back to Miami, go back to Cleveland, like a big part of the development with those big threes and those star trios working together was Chris Bosh and Kevin Love expanding their range and being shooters and being able to play off of the ball more, and like it being more so LeBron and Wade and LeBron and Kyrie as the primary ball handler, attackers, and like those guys being more like satellite shooters and spacers, and just not getting the same on-ball opportunities because it's really hard to have three on-ball players together. It more so has to be two guys. Then I think there's other examples of, you could look at Golden State where, I mean, technically Steph or KD could have played off the ball, but because those guys were the better scorers, it was more like Clay as the third guy. And then going back even further to Boston in the big three, Ray Allen was the guy who took the big step back from a usage perspective and became more of just a shooter when he could obviously do more than that. So point being, I think Austin with his shot, and we've seen some more flare screens and pin downs and different things that the Lakers are doing with him off of the ball. I think they're making that concession of he's being more used like in that sort of satellite way, whereas LeBron as a post-up guy and around the elbows, a little bit of pick and roll, not much, and then Luka as the heavy pick and roll guy, like that's the way the big three is functioning. Now Austin is still getting some looks in some of those lineups with the stars, but then also he's not getting his own lineups. So he is playing next to Luka when Luka's going to get a certain usage. He's playing next to LeBron. LeBron's going to get a certain usage. So Austin's taking a step back. And when you hear that, it sounds like a negative thing. And I think they could do a better job of getting him more involved. But I think someone has to sacrifice. I think it should be more matchup dependent than it has been up to this point. But right now it's looking like Austin is the guy who is either being forced to sacrifice or choosing to sacrifice. I don't have insight into that yet, but he's been the guy who's taken the step back. Savage Barbarian, thank you for the super chat. Reeves, the only guy where I see people want him to score 30 on 11 shots, playoff ball, defend well, and still not want to pay him what he deserves. Shout out to Savage for the Batman profile picture. Love the Batman profile picture. Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm not like, I've been a little bit more critical of Austin lately, but I think that was more so having to do with like, so I think the games he was worthy of more criticism for me were the Boston game. I thought he just did not have a good game. The OKC second half, I thought he had a good first half, rough second half. And the Phoenix game, I think it was not a great game for him. Orlando had a rough first half, good second half. So like he's had a couple of these games, Orlando and OKC, where like one good half, one rough half. But to your point, like I'm not holding the recent scoring decrease against him the same way other people are. I just have felt in terms of him creating his own shot against some of those elite defenses and elite defenders and like the turnovers and the passing and stuff, like he just hasn't been up to, like that's the final thing for Austin, right? I think the final thing for Austin is, can he do this against San Antonio? Can he do this against OKC? I mean, he had a couple nice games against Minnesota earlier in the season. He'll get another shot. Can he do this against Houston? Can he do this against the best defenses, the most athletic backcourts? That's the final thing with him. If he can do that, I think he's passed basically every other test. So I'm not to your point. Like I think people are asking the moon from him. I think the 30 points, 11 shots like that, no one should be expected to score 30 on 11 shots or even 25 on 11 shots necessarily. I mean, I guess it depends on how many of those are threes. Playing off the ball, I mean, he's embraced that. He's doing that well. Defending well, I think he has his solid moments defensively. I think he has It's a mixed bag at times, but I think he's generally trying and generally in the right spots. And then, the payment, it will be interesting to see how this stretch ultimately impacts his potential contract, if at all. I think he's looking less like a max player more recently, but I've been adamant that I mean, 30 is like the absolute floor. I even think that's too low. I think realistically it's probably like 35. But to me, he's still somewhere in that like general 35 to $40 million range, with the max being 42.5. So I don't think he's quite there recently, but I think he will be in the mid to high 30s, barring a catastrophic fall off here, which I don't think this has been a catastrophic fall off. And I don't think that's going to happen in the playoffs. But if it does, then we'll have a different conversation at that point. But up to this point, I think he's still in that like mid to high 30s. Shout out to my mom for gifting 10 memberships. Shout out to the new 10 members. Hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you, Mom. Michael D., thank you for being a member for the last 4 months. And thank you for the super chat. One food or cuisine you would love to eat more? That's a good one. I always love the personal questions. I would say I'll give you a couple of. So I try to eat a lot of protein with every meal, and so some sort of like meat or protein shake or whatever. That's kind of like the basis of most of my diet. So I rarely have the meals that are very carb heavy, like a pizza or a pasta or even like ramen or something. So I would say some sort of, because I always just feel like I'm sort of like wasting the calories or like not able to fully enjoy it without getting a certain amount of protein in. So I would say, I think ramen was the first food that came to mind that like I could probably have ramen once a day if I really wanted to. I don't get to have it as much as I want. A really good pizza, really good pasta, but like I would say that the starchy carbs, the things that I will have, I try to pair it with like, a steak or something like that, or chicken or whatever to kind of balance it. But I would say some of those things are things I've kind of cut out of my diet that I would like to be able to enjoy more and eat more of. The other thing that just popped, like Indian food. My wife has really got me. She loves Indian food, and that's something that we enjoy. And not always great for my stomach, but I do love me some Indian food. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Lakers give up too many boards after good defense. Agreed. I would say this is one of the biggest issues with the Lakers defense is like the initial 16 to 20 seconds will be really good. And then there'll be some sort of, it's like in a way, the longer you can get the Lakers to play defense, the higher the probability is they're going to screw up. It's sort of like the analogy of like when you're the underdog, you want to like especially you'll see it in like March Madness and some of the college basketball games where like the underdog will almost slow down the pace because if there's fewer possessions, you have a better shot of like kind of getting lucky and getting away with a win. Whereas the more progression, the more possessions and the more opportunities you give the better team, the higher probability that like their talent and their skill will inevitably lead a comeback. That like just the larger sample size, right? Like that's what's fun about March Madness is it's not necessarily the best team. Like a lot of times there's these big upsets. If you played like a 7-game series, maybe that team like steals game 1, but then the better team wins the next 4 or wins it in 6 or whatever. But like because it's one game and it's just anything can happen in the one game. There's like that added excitement. So I feel like that's kind of how the Lakers defense is, where if you, I mean, you could score on them quickly. Like you could score them quickly, you could score them slowly. I'm not trying to say like the only way to score on them is to go deep into the clock, but the Lakers will have like these possessions where they're great for, again, 20 of the 24 seconds, and then someone breaks down somewhere. And it's like, if you can be patient enough against the Lakers defense and give them a chance to screw up or have a self-inflicted wound, they at some point will likely do it. And that's just been one of the unfortunate parts of their season defensively. So like, if you're just, I mean, I think we saw this a little bit with Golden State. If you're almost playing a little bit too fast and just jacking up shots and you don't have the requisite skill and talent in shot making, I thought Golden State's strategy, especially in that first half, kind of played into the Lakers' hands, where it's like, you saw when Golden State was actually able to run some actions and get into, like, when they got into the paint, a lot of good stuff happened. It was layups, it was offensive rebounds, it was cuts. Like that was where Golden State had success. And I think that's like my broader point here is just when you can be patient with the Lakers defense, they will inevitably screw up. So part of that is like guys will screw up a switch, guys will give up a back cut, guys will over rotate, over help, whatever. But another big part of it is also not boxing out, giving up offensive rebounds. I mean, it cost them the Orlando game, right? Like, I mean, the Wendell Carter putback, multiple, I mean, basically everyone who was out there with the exception of Luka, who made some contact with Wendell, the other four guys just turned and looked for the rebound. Austin was the primary culprit there, did not put a body on Anthony Black. Anthony Black slithers past him, gets the rebound. Austin pokes it loose, but then ends up in the fray, going right to Wendell Carter Jr., who gets a putback, and Magic win the game. So, yeah, like what's weird is the Lakers have actually been a good defensive rebounding team overall. It's just, I think there's a pretty big discrepancy in their losses versus their wins. So it's like in their wins, they're a really good defensive rebounding team. In their losses, they slip up a ton. So it's like, if you look at what are the swing categories for the Lakers in terms of what will determine whether they win a game or not, the defensive rebounding is a huge swing factor. Like when they don't rebound well, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but like Lakers typically are not winning the possession battle anyway. So if you're giving up offensive rebounds on top of it, that's where you're at a deficit. So yeah, I agree. I think it's a big problem. Chuck Dangler, aka Fang Charlie, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for being a member. Istok mentioned it before, but Braun is now more on ball, which he needs. AR sacrificing, which is good. Rui's warm-up fail is epic for chemistry. LOL or lols. Yes, the Rui warm-up fail was hilarious. And like the vibes are back. The vibes are back with the team. The vibes are great right now. I agree with this. I think the tough thing is like the tough thing for Austin is just that I think Austin on ball has been better than LeBron on ball this season. And I think that's reflected in their scoring numbers. It's reflected in their efficiency. It's reflected in their offensive metrics overall. Like it's definitely closer now than it was earlier in the season. But I think if you think about the version of Austin we saw the first, like really through his first calf injury. So like, let's just say like into early December, from like late October through early December, that version of Austin, I think is the second, like that. We just say like that's Austin's peak this season up to this point. I think that is the second best Laker. Like I think that's better than any stretch LeBron has had. LeBron has had some good stretches. And again, he deserved to be an all-star. I just think Austin at that point was at an even like higher level than that. I mean, I was making a case for him as an all-NBA guy, but I wasn't the only. Like, if you listen to national pods, they were talking about him as an all-NBA guy. Jason was on him as a potential. I mean, Jason was even higher than me. Jason was saying he was a top 15 guy in the league, just straight up. Like, I wouldn't go that far with Austin even at that point, but like he was having a great start to the season and he carried them in several games and was making big shots and making big plays. And so I think that the tough thing for Austin is that like I think slayed some of the Dragons early in the season. Because again, like the Minnesota matchup, that was hanging over Austin's head all summer. And, oh, you didn't play well against Minnesota. Oh, this, that, McDaniels, Ant. Then he comes out second game of the season, has a good game against them. Luka leads the way, but Austin was a quality number 2. Then Luka and LeBron are both out for that game in Minnesota. No Ant on the Minnesota side, but they still have Randall, they still have McDaniels, they still have Gobert. I would say they had 3 of the 4 best players in that matchup. And Austin cooks them 28-16 game-winning shot over Gobert and DiVincenzo. So Austin slayed some of those Dragons to start the season in terms of having some big games against athletic teams. Not the San Antonio, Phoenix, OKC types, but I thought he had a good start, and then he's now taking a step back, and I understand it. And I think, again, with the shooting, he's probably the guy most equipped to be more of an off-ball movement guy, movement shooter. But I do wonder what the opposite would look like if it was Austin more featured and LeBron less featured. But the issue is LeBron has not been as effective off the ball this season, I would say. He's still cutting transition but post ups, it's more to get the ball, right? And even some of those things, it's more to end up with the ball. So but I think Austin deserves credit for willingly taking a sacrifice, or even if he has not willingly taken it, he's embracing it. Cad, thank you for the super chat. You think AR's usage is down because of the rotation? Pairing LD, AR mins, and smart LBJ means AR on ball usage will drop and LBJ on ball will go up naturally. Yeah, I mean, he's basically he's always playing with another star, if not both of them. Because as I mentioned, there's also the middle part of the second quarter where they went with all 3, into closing the first half. I think they rotated, Smart was in there, Rui was in there, Luke was in there, and then they eventually went back to it might have been Rui, Luke, Smart. They closed with the start. No, they actually closed with Rui. So I think it went Smart, Luke, Rui, whatever. I think part of it's the rotation. I think part of it is, again, someone kind of has to take a step back. And I think we've seen we'll just pull it up. We'll pull it up now. I don't know if the updated stats are going to be there, because it's not just LeBron. It's I think multiple guys have. So if you look at post All-Star break here, okay, the updated stats are there. So we'll see what it is. Give 1 second for NBA.com to load. Please load. Thank you. All right. This is great. I'll share the screen for this one. Let's get interactive here. All right. So here is the Lakers post All-Star break. Hilariously, this is why I just laughed. Kobe Buffkin is leading the team with a 40% usage percentage, because Kobe Buffkin is he's gunning in garbage time. Luka, 34% usage. That's actually lower than his season high percentage. Or season long percentage, excuse me. So Luka's usage has dipped a little bit. LeBron is at 27%. Austin is at 21%. So for perspective, going into tonight, Austin was at about, he was at about 28% usage. So that's a stark drop off post, that's the totality of the season, but it's a stark drop off post All-Star. And LeBron was at 28 going into tonight. So LeBron's down a little bit too, but he's generally in the same spot. Austin has dropped from 28 to 22, which is a pretty big drop off. Then you got Bronny, who obviously, that's the garbage time minutes, but Luke is at 16, DA's at 15 and a half. And then there's a drop off. Jake, Rui, Marcus is I did not expect Marcus is basically lowest in the rotation outside of Maxi, which is pretty surprising. I feel doesn't feel like Marcus has been that off the ball, but yeah, I think it's been there's been an accumulation here of several guys having, DA has been a little bit more involved. I think Luke's been pretty involved. Marcus has been handling the ball more, but that doesn't necessarily reflect to usage, because that's more so ending the possession, which I guess is Marcus, I feel has been more of a secondary ball handler than normal, but he hasn't been finishing possessions, I guess, technically. But I think there's multiple factors that have gone into this with Austin, but I think the usage will bounce back into the mid-20s at least, but I don't know if it goes much higher than that. Hey, Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Not realistic, but want to see JJ give the young guys an opportunity. Need to see if they can make an impact going into the playoffs. Need more options based on matchups. I think the key here is not realistic. The first two words that you used in the question, I just don't. Nothing we've seen from JJ the last two seasons suggests that he is going to play the young guys any meaningful minutes. So, we saw it last year with Dalton. It just reached a certain, Dalton definitely dropped off, but it even reached a point where it was just Dalton got the one shift in. Remember, he'd always start the second quarter or enter at some point early in the second quarter, play 4 to 5 minutes. He had to become the Human Torch. Otherwise he would not come back in, and basically never became the Human Torch, never played a second shift. And that was it. Adu, there was multiple opportunities to play Adu this season that JJ just chose not to. He has not valued that general player archetype in terms of Vando and Adu. I mean, even remember, going back to when Vando was a DNP CD, it was because LeBron returned and they basically had a full rotation at that point. And then it became, they started to get more injuries and the defense was it was a mess and it's continued to be a mess. But at some point it was we have to play Vando. We need some defense. We need some energy. We need some rebounding. And he was sort of forced into playing Vando as a last resort. So I think this general player archetype of an athletic wing who is considered an offensive minus and limited offensive player who can't really shoot. Adu's shown some off the dribble chops, but Vando's, I think he's underrated as a DHO guy, and he played point guard in high school, and I think he's a decent passer for his archetype. But you don't really want Vando dribbling the ball. We've seen him at times try to do too much offensively, and he'll dribble the ball out of bounds, throw a bad pass, get picked, whatever. So I think JJ just does not value that archetype. Kobe Buffkin had a couple of decent games as part of that 10-day contract, then just doesn't play the rest of the time, and now is only a garbage time guy. Drew Timme had a couple of really solid performances as the Lakers started to play more zone. Then JJ just inexplicably went away from that for no apparent reason. It was just, it worked a couple of games, then he just pulled the plug on it for I don't know why. So I think it's a pipe dream. Adu, Drew Timme, Kobe Buffkin, Bronny has only gotten a couple of rotation opportunities, period, all season. Dalton, that ship has sailed. That's over. So I just don't see it. I don't see what I think. Adu is the one. Adu and Drew Timme are the, and Kobe Buffkin. They signed Kobe Buffkin to the 15th roster spot. So it's what was the point of doing that if he's just going to collect dust and be a garbage time guy? So I think those three are the guys I'd be interested in terms of Buffkin, seeing what the Lakers have, seeing if they want to keep him next year. They got the team option on him. Drew Timme, again, we've seen some shifts of him as a 4 in these double big looks that the Lakers just went away from. Not only with Timme, but just in general, right? Remember that they were still doing it with Maxi, and then they stopped doing that. And then Adu, I think, is this wild card athlete in the rotation. But to your point, the Lakers are now going 11 deep, whether it's Maxi or Vando as the 10th or 11th guy, and none of those guys are the young guys. So I think of the roster guys, Dalton, Bronny, Adu, and Kobe are just all on the outside looking in. It's going to probably have to take an injury. But even if it's an injury, they'll still probably just go with 10 guys then, right? If one of the top 11 is out, they just go with 10. You probably need 2 injuries for one of those guys to really crack it. So I don't think it's going to happen. Kristen Lee, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for being a member. Luka's taking less shots since Austin came back 4.5 less, but LeBron is taking average 6 more. LeBron taking almost the same number of shots as Luka now. Austin's being squeezed out. Do you agree? Well, I don't disagree with your numbers because you came with the research and you came with the facts here. So I believe and support these numbers that you are presenting. I I don't want to say Austin's being squeezed out because if we look at, but like, well, I just feel like there's like a negative, and I'm not trying to project what you meant by this, but like, I think just the general sentiment with saying someone is being squeezed out, that there's sort of like a negative undertone to it. And I don't think this is like some grand conspiracy to undermine Austin. If we look at, so Austin came back, Austin's been back for 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. Austin's been back for 10 games. So let's look at the last 10 games. Now, if we go usage wise, Luka's still at 34. So Luka's usage remains unchanged, like post All-Star plus the past 10 games. So Luka's usage has taken a dip here. LeBron is at 28.5. So LeBron's usage is actually, to your point, gone up. Austin's at 24. So that's closer to a season average, but still several points lower. Then we get to a big drop off in the rotation to like Ayton at 15, Kennard at 15, Marcus at 15, Rui at 15. So that's where there's like there's almost a 4-way tie for like the fourth option here between DA, Luke, Marcus, and Rui. They're all between 14.6 and 14.8%. And actually, you keep going down. You get to LaRavia at 14.4, Jackson Hayes at 14.4, Vando at 14. So like you have 7 guys within less than 1 usage percentage of each other. So it's been pretty egalitarian beyond the big 3 in terms of like who's getting opportunities offensively. But to your larger point, like, yes, Austin has taken a step back. Where I would say, like, if we look at let's extrapolate this out a little bit and just see over the 10 games where the Lakers are at offensively. I mean, it's been a mixed bag because some of those games, they were pretty bad. They're 8th offensively over this 10-game stretch. So it's working. They are 17th defensively, and they are still only 15th in net rating. They just can't be more than a league average team net rating wise. But I want to give it a little bit more of a sample size here. I mean, 10 games is not nothing. 10 games they've played 60 games, so that's a sixth of the season. That's not a sample size to sneeze at. But I think my assumption here is that they're going to try to get Austin more involved moving forward over the final 20 games. Like, even if he's the third option, I think he needs to be more involved than he has been up to this point. So I think they'll tweak it back. But certainly, I think it just depends on like what version of LeBron they're getting. Like, I think he's been on the upswing offensively, but he did have a lull there of like 3 weeks where he was in the like high teens to low 20s. The efficiency was dropped off. The shot wasn't there. If it's that version of LeBron, I don't think he should be the number 2 option. If it's the more recent version of LeBron, you can more so make that argument. Again, I think Austin has been the more reliable and efficient and effective scorer this season, and the numbers back that up. I think Austin should be more of the number 2 scorer. LeBron should be more of the number 2 playmaker, but it's just not how that's played out recently. So in general, I do agree with you. I think, again, like, if you want to just say squeezed out in a more like neutral sense and just going by the actual numbers, like, yes, but I don't think there's some like grand, like Austin needs a smaller role or Austin has to do. It's just sort of the way it's played out on the floor. And then also within the rotation, some of the things we talked about earlier. Austin Reeves, great Laker. Yeah, this is the Austin show. Appreciate the super chat here. Is there a better way to utilize Austin Reeves? I think the Lakers could. One of the big things, just like that, I would have to dive more into the numbers, but that has just stood out. Like, I feel like he's running a lot less pick and roll, and I would like to see him run more pick and roll. So that would be something that we just have not seen with Austin as much. I mean, let's see if I can pull it up here on NBA.com. In terms of this is by team. Let's see the player tracking. Yeah, this is riveting stuff. We'll have to dive a little deeper here. Play type. All right, let's see. Pick and roll ball on the season. Austin. Oh, Nick Smith Jr. making an appearance up here ahead of Luka and Austin, but that's in terms of frequency. We got to filter some of this stuff out. I would have to do this in a different time, but I would assume his pick and roll and ISO usage have gone down, and his off ball catch and shoot, cutting, different off ball actions, that has gone up. So I would say just finding a better balance of using, leveraging him on the ball. And I think there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, right? And you have DA, who's been very vocal about not loving his role. There's a certain amount of Jackson just because of the pick and roll attack with Luka that Jackson's going to be involved. Teams are going to funnel some of these possessions to the lesser shooters in terms of Jake and Marcus and Vando and whoever else is out there. Then you have Rui and Luke, who Luke's taken on a bigger role and is, I would assume, obviously not over the full sample size, but I would assume over the last couple of games. I mean, if we looked at the last couple of games, Luke's probably closer to Austin than. I mean, we could just look this up. What does this look like? If we look at let's just say last 2 games, where's Luke at usage wise compared to? Come on, NBA.com. All right, Luke is at 17. Austin's at 20. So that's a pretty. And then Jake's actually at 18. So that's relatively close. A couple guys there taking on a higher usage. Rui's at 16. Obviously, he only played in 1 game. But point being, I just think that there's been... People are going to look at this and say, okay, Luka's gone down a little bit, but LeBron's gone up. And then Austin's gone down a lot. And it's they're phasing out Austin to appease LeBron to whatever. I don't think it's that. I think it's been a combination of the new rotation and the lineups Austin's playing in. He's at best the number 2 option in every lineup, but obviously with the big 3 is the number 3. And then also even in some of these, if there's a mismatch with one of the bigs, he might even be the number 3 option in some of those lineups. Then you also have it just in general, Luke, Jake, some of these guys, Marcus, I think having the ball more and being more involved, that all leads to cumulatively Austin just having a slightly lesser role. I think this is more of a phase. I don't want to overreact to this, but if we're having the same conversation 10 games from now, then I also think there's an element of, did the Lakers win those games? How's the offense performing? Right now, it's been more or less the same of beating the bad teams, beating the average teams, losing to the good teams, but as we've said, they have a tough upcoming schedule here. Let's see how it goes the next 9-10 games, and let's see where we're at in mid to late March. Going to go about 10 more minutes here, by the way. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Agree with Vando benching. He isn't changing the game on defense, so no sense to play him. Kleber going to be big in playoffs. Switching big, that is active. So I would say I'm okay with Vando being on the fringes of the rotation. I think in general, I've been a little lower on Vando than maybe consensus within Laker fans. Cause I wouldn't even say consensus because I think outside of Laker fans, everyone else is very low on Vando. It's primarily been Laker fans who are not all Laker fans, but the Laker fans who are higher on Vando are much higher on Vando than I think everybody else. And look, there's reasons to be high on Vando, and there's reasons, especially in comparison with the roster, where if they had multiple Vandos or guys who could do what Vando does, but if Jake or Marcus had that size or that athleticism or just some of the things that Vando can do, it's just a different player, and they have a different spot in the rotation. So I get Vando's appeal, but I think the offense has been a real limiting thing, especially in some of these bigger matchups where it's just so tough to play a perimeter player who is as offensively limited as him. Like even Marcus and Jake, when they're not hitting shots, like they can do, like Marcus can dribble the ball up the floor. He can run a pick and roll. He can swing the ball. He can drive into the teeth of the defense and do a driving kick. Like Marcus does little things within the offense that even if he's not taking a shot or even if he's going 0 for 7, he is still contributing and keeping the wheel going. Jake, similar stuff, offensive rebounding. I think their best non-star at like a non-star and non-big at attacking mismatches in the post. If you get a guard on Jake will bury him, get a foul, get a bucket. That's something he's really good at. So like they do other things. Like Rui has a level of gravity that he has. The mid-range jumpers is basically automatic. So like those guys, even if they're not making shots or scoring, they're contributing in other ways offensively that like Vando just does not. Outside of the offensive rebounding, but that still that has not always been there with him. But I still think he has some utility here, and there will be matchups where the Lakers will need him. So I would disagree with him being like a permanent DNP CD. But I'm high on like the highs of Kleber. I'm high on. I like the highs of Kleber. Can he maintain it is the big question here. And up to this point in the season, he has not been able to maintain it. He's dealt with injuries. He's dealt with just the aging process of a role player. He's not been physically right every single night. That's okay. The Lakers are not counting on him to necessarily do that. But if he can, I do think it's a little bit of an X factor within the rotation just because he does things that Jackson and DA just can't do. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Need to get LK more touches and shots, but it's tough because big three need the most touches. DA needs touches too to stay engaged, and Rui also. Yeah, and this is where we get back to like the roster construction issue with this group, where I think moving forward, the Lakers just can't really have role players who like need touches to play hard. Because to your point, if DA or Rui goes a certain amount of time without touching the ball, without getting a shot, you start to see the head drop. You start to see the engagement drop, the activity drop, the focus drop. And I don't think, especially if with how limited the big three is defensively and continues to be be limited defensively, and how limited just Luka and Austin are as a pairing defensively, you cannot have role players around them who are not self-starters, who are not self-motivators. That's where I look at Marcus, I look at Jake, I look at Jackson, I look at Vando. I think all of those guys, I look at some of the younger guys, all those players are, I look at Maxi. Those guys are self-motivators. I think, you hit the nail on the head here with that. I think DA and Rui are the two guys who stand out like sore thumbs in terms of just those guys need shots to play hard. And unfortunately, there's not in an ecosystem where they're in an ecosystem where they're at best a very, very distant fourth option. And on some nights, they're like a sixth or seventh option if Luke has it going, or if Marcus is more engaged, if Jake's more engaged. Like there's just some nights those guys are not going to be that involved, and their play and performance cannot fluctuate to the degree it has, I think, this season. But I agree in general with Luke. Like he's one of obviously their best offensive finishers, just in a blanket sense. He's their best shooter, but I also think we've seen shooting over 80% on twos. Like he can get it going inside and outside the arc. He moves, he makes quick decisions, he drives, he gets the blender going. So I think Luke needs more touches as well. I think that the tough thing and the thing they're gonna have to navigate is like I don't love Luke playing with the big three. Like in theory, it's great. You got the ultimate shooter with those three, but we've just seen enough with the lineup data here where the fourth perimeter guy really matters with the big three. And I think up to this point in the season, it seems like it's not going to be Vando, but I think it probably has to be Marcus or Jake. If it's Rui, if it's Luke, if it's somehow another, there's really no one else in the perimeter rotation, but those guys I have more, like if you add another subpar defender and you just now have four guys like that out there that can fluctuate and are really like matchup based, that's where I just think like the floor falls out from under them defensively. And then you couple that in with like DA potentially at center, or, Jackson sometimes can struggle with the verticality, fouling, whatever. Maxi, if he doesn't have the legs that night, like you quickly run out of options there. So I think you just got to be careful with that. But in theory, yes, I do like the notion of Luke getting more involved. And to JJ and the coaching staff's credit, he's gotten more involved the last couple of games. Tan Man, thank you for the super chat. Luke has done more as a Laker than Gabe did in 10. Yeah, I mean, you're saying like done more as a Laker in like one game than Gabe did in 10, or I assume that's like the full statement here. Yeah. I mean, he's already made more twos than Gabe Vincent made all season for the Lakers, but Gabe he's fallen out of the rotation. I believe he's fallen out of the rotation. Looking at his Atlanta. Yeah, he's had several DNP CDs. He's back in the rotation now, last few games, but yes, I mean, Luke, much better player than Gabe. So front office deserves credit for that one. Hans de Leon, who will be the Knicks player who will step in the NBA Finals? You're saying who will step up in the NBA Finals? I think the guy, so we're presuming here that the Knicks make the NBA Finals. The guy I would look at, would be OG Anunoby. I think that's a guy who, I think he's the biggest X factor with the Knicks. Like, I think Mikal Bridges and health with Mitchell Robinson, Deuce McBride, those are a couple big X factors off the bench. Landry Shamet and his shooting. But I think for the Knicks, OG Anunoby to me is like, he can be that, like what Aaron Gordon has done for Denver, like, or what he did for Denver during their finals run, but also like last year, what he did for Denver against OKC, where he was a big part in OKC, like, Jokic and Murray were Jokic and Murray, but like they needed someone to help them go toe to toe with OKC's big three. I think OG can have that type of impact. So if the Knicks are to go that far, I think he would be a big part of that. Two Sizzle says Pistons making the final, Celtics sending Knicks home early. I still remain higher on the Knicks than I would say consensus. I would tentatively pick the Knicks over the Celtics. I wouldn't feel great about it. Also, I mean, the wild card here is just Tatum and what state he's in physically. It could go one of two ways. He could either fit in seamlessly, and it could even go like a couple ways within that, of either he fits in seamlessly in like a smaller role and just gives them an extra boost, or he fits in seamlessly in a smaller role and then actually starts to like become, I don't think he's going to become 100% Jason Tatum, but if he even gets back to being like 75, 80% of Jason Tatum, I think that's a real win for Boston and like elevates their ceiling. I can't quit the Knicks. I don't know why. They're like the team, at least in the East, that like I still really believe in. I would agree with you though that I think I would favorite right now Detroit, New York, Cleveland, Boston. That would be my order of teams I would pick to come out of the East. But Detroit deserves to be the favorites. They've been great. And then someone had asked about OKC. Glad asked, you're betting on OKC to lose. I'm not betting on OKC to lose. I still think they should be the clear favorites. And if anything, them beating Denver and just some of the stuff that's, I think San Antonio and Denver could both beat them, but I would not pick either one to beat them. But we'll see. BC says, I don't like any of the teams ahead of LA. I guess Houston is the team they had the least historical beef with, although they battled in the 80s. LA usually won. You're not talking about like liking them to come out of the West or against LA. You're talking about just like in general. Yeah, I mean, OKC, we could run through it. Like OKC, it's not much beef between the two sides, but Luka's got some history with OKC. And then I think in general, they obviously, the way that they are officiated, some of the dirty stuff, and then like them kind of, they're very much like stick the hand in the cookie jar and then pretend they never did it. And I didn't like some of the Dort. I mean, the Dort thing in general was Bush League and completely dirty and, could have potentially really injured Jokic. But then some of their, then they're like, well, if Jalen Williams gets tripped running up the floor, it's like, nah, that was not a trip. That was an intent. Like, you see Dort back up and stick his foot out. So I don't want to like it. And if someone did that to Jalen Williams, then they should get ejected too. That was a completely dirty play. That, whatever. San Antonio, Lakers, and Spurs have their history dating back to the early, even late 90s, but early 2000s. Houston, Lakers had some history with them, as you mentioned, in the 80s, but also they played them a couple times in the 2000s with Kobe. Minnesota just beat the Lakers, and then Denver was the boogeyman for LA for a couple of years. So, yeah, I see why you'd have beef with all those teams. Bacano asks, Jovan, 1 to 10, how confident are you about Pelinka this summer? Oh, man. Yeah. This is the toughest question I've been asked all night. 4. And now I'll add a caveat here. So I'll say this. I think my prediction of how the offseason is going to go is that the Lakers are going to get an impact player or like a name of some kind. On the high end, that's potentially Giannis. A little bit lower than that could be like some other star that shakes loose that we just didn't see potentially happening, and like the Lakers land that guy. And then, below that would be like a high level starter, a Dort, a Hartenstein, a Herb Jones, like whatever, some type of clear cut starter. I think they get one of those guys. I think they get like, again, it's a spectrum. It's a scale of high side. You're adding Giannis potentially into Luka and Austin. You have a big 3, although some people don't want to call it that in the chat. And then, that's the high end. And again, lower end is like you add the one starting level name and you can present like, hey, we made an actual upgrade to the rotation. What I'm skeptical of they need 3 starters, in my opinion, if LeBron is not back. If LeBron is back, you need 2 starters, but you need somewhere between 2 to 3 starters. I'm skeptical that they're going to be able to pull that off. I also think the bench needs a makeover. I'm skeptical they're going to be able to pull that off. So I think they'll get like the headline move or a headline type move where they can like position it to the fan base of like, hey, we did this thing and like the offseason was a success. I think they need to walk away with 3, not just 3 starters, but like ideally 3 starters you're sort of financially invested in, because again, like you could technically say go back to the summer, like they got 2 starters in DA and Marcus, but if we're being honest, like both guys for basically every other West team would be bench players. So I think they need 3 legit starters that you can make a case would start for other top West teams and more bench depth. And they have to do that with like 50 low to mid 50s cap space, 3 picks, technically 2, and whatever, we'll just say 3, and 2 second round picks and like some swaps. And they need to somehow get 3 starters plus multiple bench guys. I'm just a little skeptical of that. So I say 4, and the thing that's carrying the 4 for me is like, I think they get like the one name, but I think that's not enough and they need to do more than that. Eric V asks, how do the Lakers match up with the Timberwolves in the playoffs? I think they match up better. And I'm not even just saying that because of the first couple matchups, because I personally like weigh those a little bit less than I think some people do. Like I'll say I'm going to weigh this next matchup with the Timberwolves much more than the first 2, because one thing I've shifted with my general NBA analysis is like, I think sometimes we have the first 20 to 30 games, like I feel like don't reflect who a team is as much. And if you look at like post All-Star break, post January 1st, those tend to be better indicators even than like the full season record sometimes with like how a team's going to perform in the playoffs. There are always exceptions, so I'm sure you can find an exception to that rule, but in my opinion, like the 15-4 Lakers we saw are just never coming back. That's not this team. They're much closer to the team that's been 500 for almost 3 months now. So like, I think they're better than 500, but I don't think they're 15-4. And I also think Minnesota, I think from that point, the Lakers have been much worse. The Timberwolves have been much better. So point being, like, I think the Timberwolves are better. I would favor the Timberwolves. I'm going to get that out there, but I think it would be a 6 or 7 game series. Probably. I think the Lakers have like a better chance against them than they did this like they're deeper. I think if DA can lock in, if he can listen to Clint Capella's advice and lock in, then they have some better center options. I think Jackson has grown from even last year. DA being DA when he's right, and then like Maxi not being thrown in a game 5. Like, they've got some more options there. The big three has been looking better recently. We'll see if they can sustain that. But overall, I like the depth better for LA. Now, the pros and cons here in like a macro sense are LA's should be better offensively than they were last year. Like, they're trending in that direction. And again, they're now back to being like a top 10 offense. The defense has fallen off though. And that like in the Minnesota series, it was more so the offense that failed them than the defense, but the defense was not good either. So I just wonder, I think they'll be able to score on Minnesota, but I also think Minnesota is going to be able to score on them. And like Minnesota they still have physical advantages of like McDaniels is a really tough matchup for LA. He's gotten even better this season. He's shooting in the mid 40s on threes. Ant has continued to level up. Gobert continues to be a beast. Randall's sort of their wild card, though he had a great series against LA. So I'll have a better answer for you after I see them rematch, but I think the Lakers have a better shot. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Have you been going to all the home games lately, going to any road games before playoffs? I've basically been to all the home games. I've skipped a couple. I'm still, I would say I'm like pretty much moved in, but I haven't skipped any games in terms of like taking the night off, but I have skipped, I didn't go tonight. So I think this might be the final game I miss of the home games. And, spent the day with my wife and my parents were over. Then, the Dallas. So going back over this homestand, the 2 games I missed were Dallas and Sacramento. And I think those are the final home games I'll miss the rest of the way. Maybe I'll miss one more random one, like maybe, Washington or Brooklyn, I might end up skipping out on, but, still we'll cover it from home. And then in terms of travel, I'm looking into short notice. I am looking into the Denver game next week, but probably won't go. And then I was looking into Houston or Miami. Those are, and then maybe that final Golden State game, and maybe the OKC game, although I don't really want to go to OKC unless it's the playoffs. So, I would, if I had to guess, I would say I'm going to like one more road game, maybe a couple more, but we'll definitely be traveling for the playoffs. And, right now it's looking like the Lakers will be starting on the road. So we'll be spending 5-6 days in whatever city that they're potentially starting in, but we'll see. Who knows? Maybe they end up ascending in the standings. Hans De Leon asks, Jovan, last question. Should we play more often a 14-man rotation just like today to have the main guys fresh and not fatigue moving forward? No, I think the Lakers should play a 10-man rotation. However, I think one thing that JJ could do a better job of, which he did do the past couple games, is have a little bit more trust in the bench guys, have a little bit more trust in their ability to close out a game in a fourth quarter. And again, I will give him the credit of like not bringing back Luka each of the past 2 fourth quarters. But in general, I think JJ has stretched I'm going to keep calling them the big 3, regardless of how you guys feel about it. He stretched the big 3 a little bit too much at times in terms of like, there's been I think there's been times where like it's worked both ways in terms of the Lakers blowing teams out and getting blown out. But like there's been times where I think most coaches or like a decent amount of coaches would not play them in the fourth quarter. He plays them the first few minutes. Then there's a point where maybe they'd play a few minutes, but it's clear the game's over, whether the Lakers are up or down. And most coaches would pull the players, and JJ keeps them into the 6-minute mark, the 5-minute mark, the 4-minute mark. And I think part of it in his defense has been trying to get continuity reps. I'm also sure on some level it's trying to honestly like improve the point differential net rating. And I'm sure he's enjoyed some of these like 25-point wins compared to like a 15-point win or whatever. And like that makes the Lakers statistical profile look better. But I also think, like, remember that it was not, just go back to December, like Luka and Austin were second and third in minutes. And part of that was because LeBron was out. They needed those guys to play more, but like those guys have played a little bit too much up to this point in the season, like more than they probably should have. And I think JJ needs to be cognizant of that down the stretch of the season. So I think you should not be playing more than, 11 is like the most you could really stretch it out to. I don't think, 10 or 11 is like about as deep as it gets. And then come playoff time, that's going to be down to like 8 or 9. But I think what he can do is have a little bit of a longer leash with some of the third string guys, some of the bench guys, and like bench the stars, let them rest, let them take fourth quarters off, or let them at least get more of a break in the fourth and play some of those back end guys. Connor Phillips, do you think Ayton has the worst hands in the league? If not, who do you think does? Kwame Brown comes to mind. Obviously, he's not in the league anymore. Ayton, he just reminded me of the pass that he fumbled in out of bounds today. I'm trying to think. Gobert has pretty bad hands. I'm trying to think through it. He's in the conversation. If we're talking bigs, like, starting level, let's see if there's anybody off the top of my head that let me know in the chat if there's other guys. Bacano says Gobert. Trev Gamer, Westbrook. Well, don't get me started on that. I'm going like team by team right now. I think Klingon's hands aren't great, but Gobert, yeah. That like thinking about the West, that would be it, and then in the East, yeah, that's probably, I would say it's Gobert and Ayton as like the high level centers. All right. Mac Roblox doing this, and then I got a King Carter question, and then then we got a Jazz Sing question, and then we'll wrap. Mac Roblox 94. Thank you for the super chat. What is the goal of the Lakers this offseason, and who will they most likely pursue? So I think the thing hanging over all of this is just like what happens with LeBron, and there's 3 different ways this plays out. He retires, he stays with the Lakers, he goes elsewhere. I think just by nature of 2 of the 3 options, him not being a Laker, the way things have been trending, I think, honestly, for years, but especially going back to last summer, some of the things that have transpired over the course of the season, I would say there's still a possibility he's back. I'm not ruling that out at all, but I think it's definitely more likely than definitely. I don't want to put a definite's maybe too strong, but I think that there's a decent possibility here that he's not a Laker, whether it's retirement or going elsewhere. So if LeBron isn't there, I think the goal should be add the 3 starters or get at least 2 of those 3 starters. And you're reshaping the roster around Luka. And that even includes Austin. Like, does Austin fit within that? Does he not? I think it's unlikely that you find a sign-in trade for Austin unless it's potentially like the Giannis trade. But Austin has to sign off on that. So realistically, I think you keep Austin, you try to reshape the starting group, get either sign guys or trade for guys, and also find some bargain guys for the bench and like replenish your assets from like a roster standpoint and make it more of a Luka roster. So what does that mean? That means athletic, rim running, defending big men. I think Jackson can fit into this in a backup role. I think DA, if he was willing to accept a backup role, and just with the context of he might just be on the roster because he's got an $8 million player option that I don't think he's going to get in free agency right now. Those guys can fit as like backups, but like they clearly need a starting center. Then you need multiple, the PJ Washington, Dorian Finney-Smith when he was a few years younger, Derek Jones Jr., Max Christie now, like those types of 3-and-D multi-positional wings who can play off the ball, hit open shots, cut, get out in transition, function, don't need the ball at all to be effective, don't need the ball at all to play hard, and then defensively can defend multiple positions. Ideally, like a big wing who could defend forwards and a smaller wing who could defend guards and some wings. So like those two positions, ideally as starters, new starting center, and then some bench depth and like guys who complement Luka and Austin. And you need a lot of motor, you need a lot of athleticism, you need a lot of defense. You also need some shooting, and you need to somehow do that again with less than $60 million, most likely in cap space. So the goal of the offseason is to build a contender for next year and to build a contender around Luka, playing a Luka centric style of basketball with a Luka type of roster, as we saw Dallas have in 2023-24 en route to the NBA finals, but also in 2021-22 en route to the conference finals. In terms of who they will most likely pursue, we know about the Giannis pursuit. We know that Lou Dort and/or Isaiah Hartenstein will be available because they have team options. So, there's a way that OKC can work it out and keep both. There's also the possibility that one of those guys, they could decline it or maybe rework the contract, whatever. But there's a chance one of those guys is available. We know some of the guys that have been tied to the Lakers over the last couple of years in terms of Herb Jones, Andrew Wiggins, Nick Claxton, Walker Kessler. Kessler's a restricted free agent. They're going to test the restricted free agent market with Kessler and Watson and Tari Eason. So they're going to go like the biggest game hunting with Giannis, but then they're also going to go like relatively big game hunting in terms of starting level players, either restricted free agents. I think Mitchell Robinson will be in the mix, and then also trying to trade for starting level guys. So I'm on record stating I think this is going to be a multi-transactional cycle for LA to actually build a contender or like a contender on the OKC, San Antonio, Detroit level. I think they're going to need to do a bulk of the work this offseason, but I don't think they're going to be able to do all of it. Then I think it'll probably lead into the trade deadline and potentially even into the 2027 offseason. But the goal is to, in simple terms, like build a contender around Luka, go into the Luka era, and get back to being a real threat to go far in the West. Then we had another super chat from Jazz Singh. Do you think the Lakers can get Jalen Suggs via trade? That's interesting. So they would not give up Austin for him. I will state that just now, or right now. So I don't see it being like an Austin sign and trade. Although I did note, like when someone asked me in my mailbag about Austin sign and trades, I think Orlando's an interesting one. But I think if the Lakers are doing that, they would be doing that for Franz or Paolo, not for Paolo. Excuse me, not for Suggs and not for Bane. So I guess if Orlando's willing to mix it up and just like wants to get off his contract, I think, the Lakers could absorb that and they'd have to send some sort of asset. Is that like a first? I don't think they're trading 2 firsts for Suggs. We could debate that, especially if you're not, we could debate whether, I think like a first is probably fair. And then you give Orlando some cap relief. 2 things with Suggs that I note whenever I've talked about him: the injury history is extensive and the shooting is a big concern with him. That said, I think if you slot him as the third perimeter guy next to Austin and Luka, I think that could be a really nice fit. So I think he's potentially gettable, but I think it's going to cost you some real draft capital, and it's potentially dependent on. I think Orlando's heading that way, where like they're probably going to lose in the first round. If it's a sweep 5-game series, they're going to have to look to make some bigger moves. Now, just trading Suggs for like a first or something, does that make Orlando better? Like, no, but who knows what direction they go. So I guess it's like, I think it's possible. I would not say it's likely. And then I know Kane Carter had asked something, so I'll finish with that. Well, this is not what he asked. He asked, if Rui got offered $20+ million to start somewhere like Detroit in Tobias' role, do you think he'd still choose an inconsistent role in LA because he loves Luka and the city that much? No, I think I don't think LA is going to offer him $20+ million. So that would be more than LA would be offering him. But 2, if he also was offered a full-time starting role plus more money, I mean, I think that's a no-brainer. I think Rui's out at that point. B-Ball Index just had their player, or Cran just tweeted out the contract values for each Lakers rotation player compared to their actual salary, and Rui was almost like $10 million above. Was a negative by $10 million. So like basically saying he's more of a $7-8 million player. I think that's a little low for Rui, but I do think he's more of like a $12 million player than he is like a $20 million player. And then I think there's one more. Another one from Kane Carter. I would have shipped Rui DA for Dayron 2 seconds. Then you move DK. Why accept this qualifying offer if you want to move him? Rob just hates using his head and being creative. Keeping Rui DA makes no sense. Well, the issue here would have been if you did Rui and DA for Man and Dayron, you're adding about $20 million or so onto next year's cap sheet. So that's cutting into your cap space. So from the Lakers' perspective, I think like the realistic max they could probably get is like $57 million. That would have been $37 million, which like you can't get Giannis now unless you're trading players out, but like Milwaukee would have to want those players, and really it would only at that point make any sense if like Austin was in the deal, which the Lakers are confident they could. There's a version of this where they don't have to give up Austin. So I think they do not want to take back money is like the short and simple answer here. Now I would have been more open to it depending on the player. Like Man, I think at this point, Man is not really a rotation player for like an elite team. I think if you look at the elite teams I always say outside of Minnesota, because Minnesota has basically no depth outside their top 7. So sure, could he compete with like Bones Highland for like the 8th spot? Yeah. Could he compete for the Lakers with like a back end roster spot? Yeah. Or, rotation spot, but he's not playing on Denver. I don't think he's not playing on OKC. He's not playing on Houston. So I just think like he's not really a needle mover, and he's still making like $16 million next year. And then I love Dayron, and you are getting a couple seconds here, but the Lakers did not want to eat into the cap space. That's the primary answer. All right, I am going to wrap here though. Appreciate you guys. Back-to-back 2-hour streams. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Pacific time with Jason and Trevor for Lakers Collective. I'll also be making an appearance on Golic and Golic tomorrow at 1:38 p.m. Pacific time. It's a very specific time. And yeah, so also one thing on my mind with the game Adu had tonight is like I do want to do, no pun intended, little like breakdown of Adu's performances in the G League recently and some of the growth in his game and how that can project out. So that's something on my radar. Also of note, Wednesday, so Lakers play Tuesday. I'll be there for the Pelicans game, and then go live after. But then Wednesday, I will have Eric Pincus on, and we'll be diving into the offseason, all the cap minutia, all the different paths and scenarios for LA. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to be a really fun episode on Wednesday. But shout out to the chat, shout out to the late night gang, shout out to all the members. Appreciate you guys. I will talk to you all tomorrow.